Hello there and welcome to a special edition of Your Money, Their Hands. Long before it was fashionable, Mark Mobius was fascinated by emerging markets. Now, as executive chairman of Templdeton Asset Management, he and his team look after $34 billion worth of assets. And what's more, he personally manages the well-respected Templeton Emerging Markets Investment Trust. Dr. Mobius, you spend more than 250 days travelling in and around emerging markets. How are they faring in the current turmoil?
They're faring very well. All you have to do is go to any one of the shopping centers that you find in almost every country in the world, and particularly in emerging markets, and things are moving. I mean, people are consuming, the countries are growing. The emerging markets are now growing at, on the average of 6% in real terms, which is quite amazing.
And the sort of diversity we're talking about, I mean, 10 years ago, what would you have thought of? What, 4, 5 maybe? How many are there now that you look at in your universe?
Well, we started in 1987 with 5 markets, and today we're invested in over 40 around the world.
And predominantly where?
Asia, of course, Eastern Europe, Africa, and Latin America.
In terms of risk factor, I know this is something you have studied really since you started as an investment manager. The perception is that these markets are a lot riskier for private investors, indeed for professional ones as well, than the so-called established markets of Japan, America, London, say.
That was true when we started because there were so few, and a lot of the countries were just beginning to develop their capital markets. Now it's much, much safer. And the good thing is that if in a diversified portfolio, you're much safer because you have many, many markets. They're moving in different directions in different ways, so that if you do a correlation between emerging markets and, let's say, the UK market or the US market, emerging markets as a diversified portfolio are not riskier.
Looking at them, which is, in terms of, it's always said in times of a downturn that the investors, the big investors, the so-called in banks, that they are quite keen to repatriate money from these emerging markets as quickly as possible. Presumably, is that happening now?
Yes, it is happening. We're seeing a flow of money out of emerging markets into the U.S. in particular. That's the reason why the dollar has gotten stronger. But there's a big base of domestic investors now that are wealthier in China, in Russia, in all of these emerging markets. In addition, there are people like us who stay and want to put more money in because the prices have come down to very attractive levels.
There's been this big surge of money recently into the so-called BRIC theme, Brazil, Russia, India, China. Is that still a good investment story?
It's a great investment story. The reason, you have 2 resource-rich countries like Russia and Brazil, and then you have 2 large consumer markets, China and India. So the combination is very, very good, and the countries are so different. So I would say it's a very good theme.
Are you intending to stay fully invested on your investors' behalf as this credit crunch, financial turmoil unrolls, or do you think that perhaps cash is still the safest haven?
No, we stay fully invested because we always think that equities will outdo cash. And that's particularly true in our developing markets trust, since we're not required to take money out for redemptions. Just in the case of open-end funds, we have to do that. But for the trust, we can keep it in, and that's the best thing.
Now, in your time as an emerging markets manager, you've seen the so-called tiger economies. We talked about the BRIC and the emerging market story. Is there anywhere else left in the world that you can find those sort of returns again?
Well, there are a lot of frontier markets in Africa, in the Middle East, and of course scattered around Asia and even in Latin America and Eastern Europe. So we're looking at countries like Nigeria, Kenya, Vietnam. We just opened an office in Vietnam, and of course in the Middle East we've opened an office in Dubai. So there are lots of opportunities in these frontier areas.
Mark Mobius, Templdeton Asset Management, thanks very much.
Thank you.